After our first trips to the Americas, to Miami and Canada, it is back to familiar territory for the FIA Formula 2 Championship for round 4 of the season as we begin our European leg. Just 45 minutes as always to get up to speed with the circuit. Drivers pushing the limits and almost into each other. Josh Miney almost finding one of the AIX drivers. Joshua Johnson took a flying lesson coming through the chicane. Red flags came out towards the end. We had a crash for Villa Gomez throughout the session. But overall, going quickest was Gabriele Mini leading an Alpine Junior 1, 2, 3. Kush Miney was second. Alex Dunn finished in third place. There was limited running for Ollie Goethe, who pulled over on lap 5, and Villa Gomez having a crash on lap 15. A very challenging circuit, as was demonstrated yesterday. And here's a look at it for you. Just the one DRS zone going down the start-finish straight. 30 laps of sprint racing, where we reversed the top 10 on the grid, and then it will be 42 laps on feature, where both the soft and the super soft tyre will be used. Compulsory pit stops as ever in Formula 2 feature race. We're going to split the qualifying groups in this one because of track time. So 2 groups of 11. We've got the odd numbers going out first, the even numbers second, and essentially, Alex Brundle, they are fighting for what row of the grid they start on.
Yeah, they really are. Great to be for the Monaco qualifying session, one of the most important Formula 2 sessions of the year, and a quirky one. Let's take you through how it works. There are going to be 2 groups of drivers. They each get 16 minutes. The fastest driver of the fastest group will start on pole position. They then drag their group to the pole side of the grid. So when you see their performance within these sessions with the field cut in half, you'll see what row of the grid they're going to start on. These guys will stop. Group B will come out, and then the same thing will happen all over again. Obviously, we're looking too for the reverse grid pole. That's a reversal of the top 10. Still happens here for the sprint race here in Monaco. That is going to be the 5th place driver of the slowest group, still with us, that is due to start in 10th position and will therefore be reverse gridded to pole position of the sprint race. They do this to allow the drivers the opportunity to deliver a proper lap without the traffic of 20 of the full grid of 22 Formula 2 cars out on the racetrack. Alongside that, race control are pretty strong here with drivers who are slowing down towards the end of the lap in the Rascasse on their build laps, aren't they, Chris?
Yeah, you've got to be at full speed coming through Rascasse, and Anthony knows. And also, you can be penalised if you are on a slow down lap. You cannot be impeding other drivers. You've got to get off the racing line. So those are 2 things to keep an eye on, which could lead to penalties if you are not doing that. Coming around this back section, Alex, this is where we can tend to see a queue. So that is why that rule's in place. You've got to be at full speed when you get to Rascasse.
Trying to build up brakes and tyres at the moment, and that is Portier early on the lap. Noel Leon still trying to find himself a little bit of a gap. The quirk of Monaco is these drivers, unlike the rest of the year when we harp on about them moving to between the compounds of tyre for the first time in qualifying, have seen the super soft compound already this weekend. That's because they tend to go out and just run the full session here, meaning they've got a spare set of super softs they throw on at the end of free practice.
What a driver who knows all about taking pole position is the Irishman, the pink Alpine Junior livery car of Alex Dunn. Let's hear what he had to say coming into the weekend about qualifying in Monaco.
When you're driving around a street circuit like this, even as a driver, you don't necessarily realise how close you are to the walls. Like, I think For example, on my qualifying lap, let's say last year, when I looked back and watched it and saw how on the limit I was in some places and how close I was to the walls, you look down and you think, wow, that's pretty close. But when you're driving, it doesn't necessarily feel like that. I think it's just kind of a natural driver feel. A lot of us are very comfortable in those situations, getting close to the walls, being on the limit. And I think that's something where when you're a driver who's very confident with the width of their car and you know exactly how much you can push, I think that's where you start to shine a little bit in these types of scenarios. But it's also a weekend where it's very important to build up. To try and go out and push flat out from lap 1 to free practice is never going to work. And there's always a lot of track evolution. The track itself is difficult, so you need a lot of confidence. And I think that the final lap of quali, you're always pushing more and more and more. But that last lap in qualifying, you kind of need to push yourself further than what you're necessarily comfortable of. I think you need to try and find that last little bit. You get a little bit closer to the walls here and there. You carry a little bit more speed through the swimming pool. So I think in general, it's just a very enjoyable track. You don't get a feeling like this in many other places. And when you're comfortable and the car is working well, it's even better.
You've qualified around here, Alex. That's something you agree with? What are you saying there?
That is the driver's fable, definitely. All the old guard will tell you that last lap of qualifying is the one that you need to get absolutely right. These early laps, very much a build phase, as we can see Kamara still building up to his first performance here. They want to get brakes and tyres in the window, and also a bit of a side turn. It's been a long time since these Formula 2 drivers have seen the track here. They qualify in Monaco on Friday, of course, and practice on Thursday. So it's more than 24 hours since they've last spotted their breaking points and their apexes around the racetrack. John Bennett sits behind the wheel of his Triton, and different approaches then to the early phase of the session. We're hearing Bennett pushing somewhat harder than Kamara. He's going to be held up slightly then as they make their way down towards the Nouvelle Chicane.
3 drivers making their debut here, all in the next group though. Nico Verona, Emerson, Fittipaldi, Compton, Herta. Gabriele Mini leads the championship and has a good history here across both Formula 2 and Formula 3 by 21 points ahead of Rafa Kamara. Nicholas Solov is in 3rd place. Then we have Martinez Stitch on 35 points, just 1 point between 2nd to 4th. And Noel Leon, now a winner in Formula 2 on 33, tied with Lawrence Van Hoopen. So big changes can happen at this stage of the season. Rafa Kamara will know all about that. He's setting off now for a flying lap.
Let's go for a lap then with the Formula 3 champion. Front straight that isn't straight, and that means you've got to get the braking absolutely right. Take that inside curve and then out to the outside wall. The bumps come and get you in the car up to Massenet, where you've got to try and get off the brakes and roll the car in, take as much apex speed as you possibly can, then clear the brakes as well and use the undulation of the circuit to help you on the apex of Casino Square. There's banking to the inside of the higher Mirabeau, then you try and drive straight down the hill to the hairpin, staying well wide there of the curve Kamara, but he will probably climb it in the lower part of Mirabeau. Yes, he does, before using the extra bit of track on the left-hand side, and the cone to help you spot the apex of Portier. Listen to the sound of the car reverberate as you make your way through the tunnel and then blast out into the light before spotting your brakes in the bumpy braking zone of the Nouvelle Chicane. Point the car straight again and get all of the traction you can as you make your way down to Tabac, clearing the brakes on the apex of Tabac and holding as much throttle on as you can, being accurate through the first and second apexes of the swimming pool. Snuggle up to the wall on the right-hand side and watch it on the exit as you brake sharply down towards Rascasse and use the width of the circuit through the exit. Anthony nudges, he's wide and he's hit the wall. Kamara through the exit, he's bent the suspension there of the Invicta, crabbing his way down the front straight.
And that is going to be session over for Rafa Kamara, 124.3 behind. That's John Bennett going to 2nd place. Alex Dunn now coming up to the line and goes quickest, 122.4. We were in the 121s last year. Let's go on board with Kamara, and you can see that is damage to that car.
Steering wheel well out. He'll be thinking about what he's going to try and do now. So he's going to commit the cards as he notes, but get slightly wide. He's looking to be much closer to that cone on the top of the wall on the right-hand side. He's just taking too much speed in there, and you can immediately see the damage.
Yeah, that is a disaster for Rafa Kamara. He's got his time in 124.3, but there'll be big improvements for that. He would have been expecting to do another. Let's watch what happened to Noel Leon then.
Is it just slippery on the way in there today? because Noel Leon's going to get caught out as well. Big process to go through to get reverse in these cars that he immediately starts doing, so that he's out of the way on the way in. But Kamara surely now will have to commit to the pit lane unless he's going to do an Ollie Bearman in Baku and try and do a qualifying lap with the steering bent. But to try and do that around Monaco will be quite the thing.
They don't look very straight. Please report. And box if the car is not drivable.
Yeah, Rafa Kamara will be coming in. Whether we see him come back out, we'll just have to wait and see.
It's well out.
Yeah.
He's got 3 centimetres of toe in on the rear left there. That's pretty horrendous, and he has indeed come to the pit lane.
Remember, this is qualifying for both the sprint race and the feature race, and you qualify for what row of the grid you will start on. Dino Beganovic will be investigated after the session for a pit lane infringement, and Ritomo Miata, they're having a big swapper coming down to Nouvelle Chicane.
Tricky on the brakes. We've seen moments in there in F1, FP1 already. You can see the rear of the high-tech alive for Miata as he makes his way through to back, stepping once more in the swimming pool. He's really pushing on. 2 green sectors, of course, this early in the session. And then a bit of a shimmy under brakes for Raskas. This is a nice, aggressive lap for Miata. We'll get the DRS open in the single DRS zone we have here in Monaco across the line for his early benchmark.
Over 90 goes, and it's a 1:22.7 benchmark for Miata. Noel Leon's on a good lap, but he's caught some traffic. I think that's an ART of Intra Pubizak who's going to go out the way. And Noel Leon, you can see what he thinks about that.
Yeah, really not happy there. And Intra Pubizak dived over the second part of the swimming pool, but Leon had already backed out of it. Luckily now, he looks like he's got a bit of track ahead of him and go again. Unluckily, there's a yellow flag on track.
Yeah, well, we'll find out who that's for. Yellow flag in sector 7. I think that's going to be around the top part of the circuit, but Alex Dunn with his Monaco special crash helmet coming through the swimming pool section, and he's looking very quick on this one.
Got himself a little bit late in the first part of the swimming pool, but it's a purple middle sector. That yellow flag still outdone. Loses the rear on the way in. And did he lose a little bit of the floor there through the exit of the Raskas against the wall? In any case, second will become first. Will it? No, he lost too much in the final couple of corners.
Yeah, Dino Beganovic is fastest now, 1:21.9 for Dino. Kian Shields, first points for him last round, and he's carried that confidence into Monaco. Second place for the AIX Racing driver, very briefly. Gabriele Mini now goes to second. Rafa Kamara, the team, furiously working on that car. As it stands, he'd be on row 10 for both races. This is an absolute disaster for the Formula 3 champion.
Well, we've seen exceptionally quick changes of these suspension elements before. Upper wishbone there, that's being moved. And they're seeing if they can get him back out there for the end of this session to try and get a lap in. If he cannot, it is an absolute disaster for Kamara. 5 minutes to go. This would be a world-class job if they get him back out there.
Victor Racing doing the best they can. You could see the amount of damage that was there. What happened to Montoya?
Double front lock-up on his way down to Mirabeau. Looks like he clouts the barrier there on the left-hand side. Remains to see if there's any damage, and it's a lot of turning to go from there.
Intra Pubizak into the barriers, coming into Raskas and straight into the pit lane. The only handy thing there is you're right by the pit entry. That was Alex Dunn.
Yeah.
A lot of noise coming from that as he came into the corner.
Yeah, a lot of action in this first session. We were talking just before we came on about how it tends to be session B, where the benchmark is laid down. Drivers see their early lap before they've got brake and tyre temperature in comparison to the lap of the first session, sometimes panic a bit, and that's why we see some incidents in the second session. But this has been a busy one. Noel Leon purple at the moment. That's the first sector, which runs all the way down to the upper Mirabeau, and the middle sector starts from there, runs through this section, through all the way down to the entry of the second part of the swimming pool. Yellow flag out once more in track sector 2, so that's earlier than Noel Leon is. He should be able to complete this one.
Yeah, I think someone's gone straight on at the first corner, possibly, or it might even be worse than that. Red flags are out. Not good for Noel Leon. He was on a purple lap there, but the red flag is now out, and there we go. Well, that is the Trident car of John Bennett, who's gone straight into the wall at turn 1, and that is session over for him.
Not Sherlock Holmes stuff to work out what's gone on there, unfortunately, for John Bennett. A relatively big impact. Glad to hear that he's okay in the car. Has caught the smaller element of the Tech Pro barrier there, and good to see him jump out of the car.
This does give Invicta Racing a little bit more of an extended time to try and fix that car of Rafa Kamara. John Bennett, sadly though, will have his lap time deleted. Let's find out what happened.
Deceleration completely lost, and tries, as we've seen a couple of drivers do, to commit to the runoff area on the inside of Sandoval.
I'm so sorry, guys. I was appointed that you're okay.
Precisely that. That's a big impact for John Bennett, was on for points at the last round. Just really disappointing luck for him, and it's a shame because he looked like he was on for a possible top 5 finish there.
You'd say he's not the first, and he won't be the last. I'm not sure he'll even be the first or last this weekend in Sandoval. And the red flag will be assisting Kamara quite a lot, won't it?
Yeah.
The clock does stop, so 3 minutes 51 seconds on that clock, and it gives them all of this time to assist in repairing the rear suspension.
It seems like the work that they were planning to do was done there. We'll find out. Of course, they won't know until he gets back out on the circuit how good the car is looking. What we would say is Invicta had to do similar things to Rafa Kamara in the last race. He picked up a penalty during the race and then had to serve that penalty in the feature race in Canada. So they did a long pit stop so he could serve his 5-second penalty. As a new rule this year means any penalties in a feature race carry over to the next feature race.
The Uber crane down at turn 1, onto the platform where the car then sits for the rest of the session. Sort of a ceremonial burial on the outside of Sandoval, unfortunately. But there's not a lot of space down there, so they put a platform where they plonk the car down on. So my friends who've crashed there have told me.
Yeah.
We don't mention that here.
No. I could get both sides of the story in Formula 2 and Formula 3.
Yes, she definitely could. Formula 3 co-commentator, somewhat involved with that one. Let's have a look at this incident for Kamara to save me from myself. So in he goes, and it's just got a little bit of understeer there, and he's just taken too much speed in. So difficult to judge the amount of grip on track in these early laps. You heard Alex Dunn at the top of qualifying talk about how much you have to build up even through the early phases of the qualifying session, and it's just caught out Kamara there.
Yeah, and another Marshall just grabbing a little bit of bodywork there. We saw that in practice yesterday. I'll take that.
So still waiting, but it shouldn't be too long now. They'll be wanting to push on with this first part of qualifying. 2 time laps and no time for a cool is the information for Kamara over the radio for Invicta. But he'll consider that a get out of jail free, I thought.
Yeah.
Having an incident at the beginning of the session, and in a weekend like this one, is to try to save qualifying is so important. There's the platform of note.
Yeah. There's John Bennett's car crashing into the barrier at the first corner, and that's what now they're repairing. Let's have another look at it then. And
it's relatively warm out on track in terms of track temperature, but it looks like he's just not got the front going there and then committed a bit late. It's such a tricky braking zone because you're trying to turn and brake at the same time. And there's not a lot of grip down there, not a lot of tyre energy to play with. You get in slightly late in these Formula 2 cars. It's so hard to recover it by cadence braking the front axle and turn it in. We've seen drivers throughout free practice, which is what John Bennett's trying to do, which is why he sort of goes straight into that final bit of tech pro there. Basically realise they're not going to make it. Rather than committing to the escape road, they commit to the inside in the corner near the pit lane there, as long as there's nobody coming out of the pit lane. Yeah. And then that gets them out of trouble, rather than going to visit the chapel on the outside of Sandoval, after which the corner is named.
Well, you can see the audity on that. Sanatoy Traffic was out yet to really put a time on the board. We saw him as he was getting ready for his lap go into the barriers at Rascasse and dive straight back in. So ART have been having to do some work as well. Well, we saw Juan Pablo watching over Sebastian Montoya as he was coming through the swimming pool section yesterday in practice. He's had a good history here with the podium last year. Let's hear what he had to say about the second.
It's really difficult at the beginning because there's so much going wrong. Like I remember my first couple laps in Monaco practice, you just kind of go out there and you're just kind of like, whoa, this is something else. Because obviously, as you're growing up, people always talk about the Monaco Grand Prix, and your first time actually driving the track, you kind of go, whoa, this is cool. And then as a driver, you kind of need to put that aside and you have to say, okay, I'm here to do one job, and the job is to go fast. And then you kind of start pushing the limits every time. And the cool thing about the track is that it can catch you out if you're not on it. And if you try to go a little bit over that limit, it usually penalizes you. So it's not a super quick track, but it is a really technical track, and you really need to make sure you're maximizing that. And I think in F2, obviously, with the level that, especially this year being so high and how tight the qualifying has been, I'm expecting around here to be really similar. So just make sure we dial it in, and the experience is usually really fun.
Seb Montoya there. Is that something you relate to as well? It's, you know, when you get out on track for the first time, there is that moment of taking it all in that you really are here at the Monaco Grand Prix.
Oh yeah, I mean, iconic sequences of corners, and look at the movies, look at cultural references, look at how the world of the pinnacle of motorsport is depicted around the world. The streets of Monaco are picked as the venue so often. It's something to get used to. And to be there, drivers on, when you go out of the pit lane, is like, wow, this is what it looks like then. To drive the streets of Monaco, because you've seen it so many times from the iconic camera angles that sort of seldom change as well over the years, and suddenly you're watching it from the driver's perspective. It's really quite bizarre, but very special. At the pit lane once more then, and just watching for Kamara, who has managed to get out.
Yeah, so he's there, leading the way, Rafa Kamara. That is, as you mentioned, world class that they've managed to fix that car. He's back out. We haven't seen him yet at speed, but nevertheless, he's back out on track and has a chance now to improve on that P9.
Point there for Bennett, who, if this session is stopped again or fails to run its full course, there sits in fourth position. So that would turn into either seventh or eighth, depending on whether this session is faster than the other session. But may lose that time as being the sole cause of a red flag, which in Formula 2 sometimes costs drivers at the race director's discretion their best lap of the session. It tends to be where it's a driver error that they would cost John Bennett that time. So could be pretty unfortunate that for Bennett.
Now, Gabriele Mini also noted for a pit lane infringement. We saw a similar note coming up for Dino Beganovic earlier, who currently leads the way. Right, let's watch Rafa Kamara then and see how that car is working underneath him after the repairs from Invicta.
He's going to have a lot less tyre temperature, of course, as well than the rest of the field, because he's been sitting in the pit lane while they've been pounding laps in, getting the core temperature into the tyre. So got a tough job now to try and recover this session if he possibly can. Kamara looks tidy so far through Massenet, nice and close to the wall on the inside of Casino Square, and he's only 10 down, well, almost 2 tenths in fact, in that first sector of the lap. It's going to be damage limitation here.
Yeah, as they said, this is just 2 push laps to the end. No time for a cool down lap. So this is it. This is a big 2 laps for Rafa Kamara. He cannot afford a single mistake out there that would end his session. He's coming through the tunnel now, just 2 tenths down, as you said, through the first sector. Let's see what he does through the second. And sole cause of a red flag investigation after the session for John Bennett, as you mentioned, Alex.
It's a low energy track, but this is a very soft tyre. So we'll see if the drivers are actually able still to improve, having put a decent heat cycle through them. Kamara, a second down look. That's what having to sit out the early stages of the session does for you as he makes his way through the swimming pool. You can see the field behind him actually catching him. On merit of where Invicta finds himself in the pit lane, he's first in the queue here, Kamara. So if he's not got the experience, could he end up being traffic for Villa Gomez behind? Well, they're both well off the pace at the moment. Gabriele Mini, though, slightly up on what Beganovic had previously achieved as he makes his way through the final couple of corners of the lap.
Montoya having to slow down there. That's then rolled on to Gabriele Mini. Noel Leon, how the sequence is going very quickly. Here he comes through the swimming pool section now. Oh, big moment there for Leon, but he's still going faster. This could be a quickest lap. Oh, and he's into the barriers.
Still damaged it. Can he continue? Well, he has. He definitely has. Something's come out of the floor for Noel Leon, but it was a purple first, a personal best second. Will it have affected him as he makes his way across the line? He must have lost time, Noel Leon. Checkered flag is out, and it's P1, having contacted the wall in the final sector of the lap.
How on earth has he done that? 121.5 over to you, to the rest of the field. Dino Beganovic, purple through the first sector. Everyone is up through that first sector, including Rafa Kamara.
Absolutely every driver has improved. Kamara needs this for his championship challenge. The Brazilian, second in the championship, is staring being out of contention after qualifying in Monaco in the face. Has had one flying lap to get used to it. Now needs to deliver on his second as he makes his way to the line in the Invicta.
Up to the line he goes, kisses the barrier on the exit of Anthony Noakes, but it's DRS open. Up to the line, Rafa Kamara goes P1. How on earth have they done that? 120.9. But we've still got Gabriele Mini out there, Dino Beganovic out there,
Mini
and
touches
Alex
the ball.
we watch now.
And slaps the barrier through the exit of Anthony Noakes and drives straight to the line. DRS open. Can he steal the top spot from Kamara? No, he cannot. Next up will be Montoya, and then it's Mini P3. What can Beganovic do across the line?
Over the line he goes, and that will be P3. Rafa Kamara has taken provisional pole position from going into the barriers, having damage to his car. They've come in Invicta Racing, have repaired it, and in two laps, Rafa Kamara has done a 120.923, and that is provisional pole position for the Brazilian driver.
Well, they say it's a team sport, and never has that been more evident than today. Committing fully to the corner that caught him out at the beginning of the qualifying session, finds his way to the top spot.
That was Noel Leon, wasn't it?
Barrier for Noel Leon, which surely cost him significant time. Ends up fifth in that session, and therefore on the fifth row of the grid. Is there going to be contact with the wall for Kamara as well? Slightly sparks the tyre rim against the outside Armco as he makes his way through there. Stunning lap.
That's one of the best qualifying performances in Formula 2 I think we've ever had. Montoya, well, he made huge contact with the barriers, didn't he? Pieces falling off the car there. Montoya was 8th place. Remember, this is for what row of the grid they start on. If that time is not beaten, a 120.923, then Kamara will be on pole position on Grand Prix Sunday. Noel Leon will be on the front row for the sprint.
And P2. No way.
Alex Dunn can't believe it. I think pretty much everyone has had a little adventure somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He can't believe it himself. I mean, I have to say that is an outstanding performance, one of the best in FIA Formula 2 history. How on earth he's done that, I don't know. Invicta Racing have a lot to celebrate.
Yeah, once more, thank you for doing a great game.
That is why he's got that Ferrari logo on his crash helmet.
Yeah, outstanding job from the team, firstly. And then went out there and thanked them by doing the business. I think the messiness of that session may have left the door open for the drivers of Group B to take the pole side of the grid. But even still, huge recovery from Kamara, especially as Mini finds himself 4th in that session, in the same session, and therefore will be 4th row of the grid.
Yeah, completely agree. That red flag, wasn't it? Just meant those 2 flying laps came at the end. Let's remind ourselves of the result because, as Alex says, it was a bit of a messy session at time, but Rafa Kamara somehow had a crash, had to repair the car. 120.9 he did on his final flying lap, 1/10 quicker than Alex Dunn. Dino Beganovic will be on the 3rd row of the grid. Gabriele Mini row 4. Noel Leon will be on the front row for tomorrow's sprint race. Piazza just misses out. Intrapubazak next, then Montoya, Bennett, Villa Gomez and Shields, of course, from Bennett will be investigated after the session for being the sole cause of a red flag after his crash at turn 1. And there is Rafa Kamara walking down with the Invicta team. Great job from him. Now all he can do is watch on to see if Group B can go and beat that time.
Will be the only live qualifying session any of these drivers watch all year, because they will be in the car for the rest of them. Well, hopefully, be in the car for the rest of them. But stewards have picked up an incident with Mini still, so they're going to investigate his pit lane infringement after the session. So see if anything comes of that. if you're right across the socials for Gabriele Mini. And then there was a second 11.
Yes, exactly that. They're always provisional results. Of course, Joshua Dirksen and Invicta have one car on the front row. Can they put two? It's over to the other drivers in the team, essentially. Now we've seen 11 teams qualify with one set of drivers. Now the even-numbered drivers go out on to the circuit. Joshua Dirksen, Colton Herter making his debut here, Nicholas Solov, Roman Belinsky, who was on the front row in F3 here last year. Solov pulled it. Ollie Gertha, who only did 4 laps yesterday. Mary Boyer, Martinez Stenshaw, now a winner in Canada. Kush Maini, who has won a sprint race here before. Fittipaldi, Nico Verone making his debut, and then Lawrence Van Houten on screen, who took pole at Canada.
Temperature still sitting at 40 degrees, warm today, despite a decent amount of cloud cover earlier on in the session. We haven't quite caught it on the circuit cameras yet, but the darker clouds were pouring over the mountainside, and there was at one point a chance of rain for this session, but it doesn't seem to have come to pass. Now it's a case of seeing what the second group can do. There you can see it. Looks to have dissipated slightly.
Just in time.
A brighter day, still 24 degrees in the air.
Yeah, ready for the Group B session to go out. There you can see the shots of the harbour. Great atmosphere as always around the Monaco Grand Prix, and lots of people taking their seats once again to watch the second part of Formula 2 qualifying, where the next 11 go out. Nico Verone waiting to do his first qualifying session at the circuit.
In typical engineering terms, you would expect this second session to be better, of course, because the circuit clears up, you get more rubber down. That's so often the case, and I think, in fact, it is often the case that the second session is slower statistically, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, 5 to 3 is what we have. So 5 times pole position has come from Group A, 3 times from Group B. We were talking about this before we came on air for qualifying as well. As you said, in terms of the engineering, you expect that the second group will go quicker, but they now know psychologically what time they have to be, and that can play a part in their performance sometimes.
Having to stand and watch your competitors without being in the car itself is quite a bizarre position, especially for a single-seater driver to be in. Used to have to, back in the good old days of Formula 1 with time-limited qualifying, we sat in the car with 3 screens watching everybody else qualify, deciding if you wanted to go out again. But in a modern era, you very rarely, watch your direct competitors qualify. I think it puts a lot of pressure on the drivers in the second group. But you can make your own theories about why the second group doesn't seem to yield quite as many pole positions. But theories are not going to be needed because we're about to go green for that second session of qualifying.
Yeah, all questions will be answered. Who's going to take overall pole position? Let's go and find out. They know what time they have to beat, which was set by Rafa Kamara. Now it is over to the next group to try and beat that time of a 1:20.923. See a build-up process, of course. I guess plans for the drivers when they come into a session like this is to go fastest on that final lap, but it's a shorter session. It's what they're used to, so things can change slightly. And of course, Monaco, Streets of Monaco is a very unique place to go at. Well, we can see Joshua Dirksen leading the way around. We've got Lawrence Van Houten, Nico Verone making his debut here this weekend. Let's check in with team principal at Van Amersfoort, Brad Joyce, about what he had to say about Nico Verone.
Yeah, so his strongest skills is his pace and his natural ability is very high. So car control and understanding. His challenge is to bridge that gap where he's missed out on Formula 3 and the series below, really, which is quite a challenge for him. But he has been adapting very well. So I was impressed with that.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges Verone's had. It was a little while since he raced in single seaters, so this something that he's having to readapt to.
driver from a sports car background in most recent times, GT cars, specifically Corvettes, and making the jump across to Formula 2. Roman Belinsky pouring out of the pit lane slightly late. So what he does with that move is basically gives up a lap to make sure that all of his laps are clear. He does risk a red flag and catching the back of the field, but they've obviously made the decision down at Gams that they want to give him all of the clear laps that they possibly can and allow him to perfectly build his tyres into the position that he wants them in as well, which is not to be sniffed at in the early stages of qualifying.
I guess this is one of those sessions maybe you want to be first or last, essentially, in the queue.
Yeah, and obviously those positions are set by the organisers, so you don't have the option to just line your car up where you want it. So no further investigation in Group A. Car 11.
That's Montoya.
Was deemed to be, was not deemed to be impeded because there's no further action. As a result of that, so he could breathe easy on his qualifying position. He build up one more time then under the sunshine in Monte Carlo.
Lawrence Van Hoopen, pole position for him last time out. Experience around this circuit. Be confident coming into this session and right up there in the championship as well. P6 for him. Oh, and well, bit of a miscommunication was that with Kushmaini, and there's been an incident. That's very clumsy coming down the hill. Kushmaini into the back of Lawrence Van Hoopen. Damage to both cars, and he's got stuck on the curb.
Well, that if you look up unnecessary in the dictionary, I think that video might play.
Yeah.
That was totally unnecessary, wasn't it? Down into the Nouvelle chicane, and unfortunately, he's not going to be able to return to the pits in his own path. So mine's going to go to the inside and enforce the issue with Van Hoopen. He's hoping there that Van Hoopen is going to go straight across the chicane and basically let him through. Van Hoopen's just building his tyres into the window.
What the f*** is he doing? I'm stopping the group. Someone to push me.
They won't be able to continue even if they do, because that's outside assistance. So even if he is able to return to the pit lane, he won't be able to take any further part of the section, unfortunately.
That replay from head on, it looked like that was a last lap dash down the inside, which was just never going to work. For that to happen in a qualifying session this early on is just very silly. Lawrence Van Hoopen now finds himself stuck on the curb, and he's going to go no further in this session. Disaster for Trident. John Bennett out at turn 1 at Sandoval, and now Lawrence Van Hoopen stuck on the curb, going no further. Both red flags being caused by both red flags having involvement, shall I say, by the Trident drivers.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see who race control would deem to have caused that red flag, actually, when push comes to shove at the end of the session. Kushmaini wants the track position and is not happy to be stuck behind Lawrence Van Hoopen. But a bit of a disaster there for Van Hoopen, who finds himself 6th in the championship and looked really strong throughout free practice. 5th place in free practice for him, a couple of tenths off the pace. So could easily have been a decent qualifying session for him. A little bit of a planning meeting going on down there, and they're asking him to get out of the car, unfortunately, so that they can recover it. I wonder if he might have been requesting a push.
Yeah.
But there gets to a certain point where the engine overheats anyway, so he would have had to have got out. And I would not be surprised if he finds himself mildly miffed there, standing on the outside of the Nouvelle chicane.
That's going to be a tough watch, isn't it, from the Nouvelle chicane there. Lawrence Van Hoopen showing such good pace so far this season. Well, red flag is out because of Lawrence Van Hoopen stuck on the curb down at the Nouvelle chicane. The car is now being retrieved. Let's have another look at what happened, Alex.
So down the inside, and he's just miles back.
So what is he doing, man? Yeah, he just completely went left. It's like he sees me, he leaves face, and then he completely does it. And he saw me the whole time.
Well, I think it's just two drivers there who think he's on an outlap, he'll move.
Yeah.
And they both thought that simultaneously, and neither of them did. But by the word of the regs, there, Miney's way far back from where he needs to be appropriately delivering a pass. At the same time, neither driver really needed to force the issue on that one. So a bizarre one. Like we say, it's now been picked up for causing a collision. We'll see if there will be any afters after that. I suspect there might be.
We'll find out what happens to that after the session. Martini Estencio on a double podium for him at Canada, including getting his first Formula 2 win. Let's hear what he had to say about now driving and racing on the streets of Monaco.
Yeah, obviously you have to kind of build into it. In FP, usually grip is not the best, so you have to see how the grip is first, and then kind of build into it, find your limits. But yeah, it's always really fun to drive around here. Pushing on a quality lap here is amazing. Maybe the race is not the most interesting to watch, but yeah, to do a hot lap around here feels really good. So we had a win here last year, so hoping to do that again. Yeah, it's not easy. We know, of course, the consequence is quite big if you make a mistake, but all the tracks we've done so far this year has kind of been street tracks, not as much as this, but yeah, this one's a bit more extreme. But yeah, the team was quite good here last year as well, so hoping to be the fast year as well this year.
Good history here for Rodin. Of course, taking pole position last year. Martinius, an F3 winner here as well, and he's had such a great start to this season in terms of pace. The results then finally delivered for him at Canada. We're back underway now in qualifying. 12 minutes to go.
Kimi Räikkönen, actually, Martinius Estencio,
Yeah.
who had his nickname aired by Alex Dunn back in Canada. I'm sure he was delighted about that in the bus. It would have been more delighted about their sequence of results.
Yes. Yeah.
They did a great job in Canada, and so we build up again after an initial red flag. Oliver Goethe is the driver that we're riding on board with. Didn't have a great time in free practice. Didn't stop really early on in the session and didn't really get the track time in that he needed. So he'll be looking for a recovery job as well. But if Rafa Kamara's performance is anything to go by, that's more than possible in the early stages.
Well,
More like it.
Yeah. But I think I wasn't the only one holding my breath for a second there. Kushmani with a move down at the Nouvelle Chicane. One thing, going back to Ollie Goethe, MP did top and tail the session. So although he didn't do a lot of laps, Gabriele Mini was fastest. So that will help him data-wise when going into this one, and shows they've got the pace in that car.
Nothing you love more, is there, as a driver, than to have a technical issue and then watch your teammate P1 the session. Yeah, there'll be a lot of data available, but also potentially not the ideal psychological dent to take into qualifying. He'll be stronger than that, though.
Mini squeezy.
Well, yeah, Fittipaldi. You're not happy with that lunge from Kushmani, but we are green, and we are watching Joshua Dirksen. Invicta quickest in the first group. Joshua Dirksen trying to do the same in this group.
Much banker, this one from Joshua Dirksen. A lot of curve on the inside, where it's been flattened out this year, actually, of the hairpin to allow the drivers to climb all over the inside curve. This is sort of a paced early banker, isn't it, from Dirksen? They're all building up slowly, and the other drivers watch on then to see how this session is going to affect their session. In realistic terms, they're only actually looking at being demoted potentially one position, though, aren't they, by each of these drivers? And so they'll all have their eyes trained on the top spot. A reminder, it's a 20.963.
120.923
that was achieved in the first session. So these things can often be incredibly close by the time we get to the end of session 2.
Last year it was 300ths of a second or 3,000ths of a second, even. It was incredibly close. So let's see. Of course, we did have that red flag in the first session, which came a lot later in the session. They are going through a build process, and they'll be hoping now for a green track all the way to the end.
Sectors coming in. These are the first sort of laps at any kind of pace. Solov now building the tyre in. A very different approach to qualifying in Monaco. So you're going to just try and wind it up lap on lap on lap rather than preparing a tyre and trying to do a glory lap. Let's see what this first one is across the line. So 123.0, so a long way still to go to meet the benchmark of session 1.
Sub 121, looking very close. So Nicholas Solov, quickest in terms of the benchmark times we're seeing out of the tunnel. It's close on track. Joshua Dirksen being followed by Kush Meinig down to the Nouvelle chicane. They go Fittipaldi in the background, having his first qualifying session here. We're hearing that Kush Meinig was on a push lap and has slowed down and gets out of the way to allow Fittipaldi to go through.
Hey, Dirksen, block me.
He's concerned about the traffic, isn't he, Meinig? He's
Yeah.
seen the drivers in his group and thought, I don't want to start my lap behind this group of drivers. You can see then Fittipaldi is going to follow Dirksen straight across the line here. For him, with all full respect to Fittipaldi, I think Dirksen is going to be the driver with more experience behind the wheel of a Formula 2 car. Wouldn't hurt necessarily to follow him around Monaco, but for Meinig behind, he's going to want to give a little bit of a space.
Let's have a look at where this all happened then. Coming down to Mirabeau. Kush Meinig can see him in the pink LP, heads down to the hairpin, and there's a slowing Joshua Dirksen.
In his build-up process there, isn't he? And Meinig going for it a little bit more. It's really going to be the final couple of tours that are going to make the difference here. 7 minutes still on the clock. This is a decent lap so far for Colton Herta, not a stranger to a street circuit, and finds his way then to the top spot in the session so far.
And that experience could be very helpful, couldn't it? 122.6 for Colton Herta, tops the times right now. Kush Meinig is once again going very quickly through the first sector. He's on a 21.9 through there. We pick up Joshua Dirksen a couple of tenths back from Meinig through the first sector, but a lot can be made up, Alex, through this last section.
Dirksen now on full attack as the car hits the floor in the middle of the swimming pool, has to give a bit on his way into the second part because he has to gather the car up. Meinig now with 2 purple sectors over these 2, but it's going to be Dirksen who hits the line first, gets very late like Kamara did earlier in the session. You see how he's gapped Fittipaldi. This is going to be a good lap for Joshua Dirksen. P1, purple in the final sector, Fittipaldi to P4, Meinig deposes Dirksen at the top.
And he's only half a second back from the time of Rafa Kamara. Kush Meinig, the most experienced driver on the grid, using that experience very well so far. Martinius Stenshorn goes second, 121.7, and everyone is lighting up the timing screens. Ollie Goethe goes P2. Here's Colton Herta on another flight.
Slightly wide in the first part of the swimming pool there for Herta, but he really opens the track up nicely through the middle of Raskas. He looks on it, doesn't he? Car moving around underneath him through the exit of Raskas and the mid-corner of Anthony Nodes.
Over the line comes Colton Herta now and stays P6. 3 green sectors, but not enough to get into that top 5. Remember, 5th fastest will go to the front row of the grid for the sprint race, so you've got to get in that top 5. Nicholas Solov goes into it and very comfortably. Up to 2nd place, he goes for Campos race.
3rd place in the championship so far for Nicholas Solov. Twice a winner already this year. Feature race in Albert Park. The sprint race in Miami. He's definitely going to be a challenger for pole position here. Let's see what's going on with Mary Boyle. We're down on the apex of the second part of the swimming pool, and tis but a scratch against the wall on the inside.
How many times are we going to see that this weekend across all categories? On a cool-down lap now we are. So let's just reflect where we are. Kush Meinig fastest, 121.4. Then Solov, Goethe, Stenshorn, Dirksen in that top 5. Verone just outside it as we get ready for our next flying laps. Joshua Dirksen sets off down the start-finish track.
The surface temperature out of the tyre. He's going to be investigated after the session for impeding. That's a big lock-up, but Joshua Dirksen still manages to get it to the apex, somehow being victor, and he's going to continue his qualifying lap, but a scary moment for him.
Yeah, he'll be investigated for that. Impeding on Kush Meinig coming down through Mirabeau. Joshua Dirksen heads back down to that part of the circuit. Now downhill he goes. Let's have a look at what happened at turn 1 again.
Going to commit the steering wheel and unload that inside front, and somehow gets the car stopped and still turns in. And the question's going to be, has he flat spotted that inside front tyre? You can see how stiff these cars are, look, as Fittipaldi picks up the inside wheel through the hairpin there. Ninth place at the moment, but that's a better first sector.
Martinez Stenchon going very well. He's done a 22 flat, and also Nico Verone has gone sub 22 through the first sector. He's on a personal best lap, the Van Amersfoort racing driver. Fittipaldi heading through the Neuville chicane now and up towards the back. This is where you've got to go as close to the barriers as you can through the swimming pool. You can see the Invicta drivers in particular just losing it a little bit through there as they push the limits. Fittipaldi now up to Rascaz, and it's looking good for Verone behind as well.
2 tenths down on what Miney's achieved. This group, by the way, still behind the other one, so they are battling over second place on the feature race grid at the moment, with 3 minutes and 8 seconds still remaining. That's a purple middle sector for Miney, who's going to come across the line and make that 3 tenths only that they need to find now to put themselves on pole position.
Yeah, 121.3 it is for him. Stenchon, 5th place. Mary Boyer gaining a position up to 9th. So it's Miney, Solov, Gerther, Dirksen, Stenchon, your top 5, and there's less than 4 tenths between them. We jump on board there with Stenchon heading up the hill, now crossing over to the Red Bull Junior, Nicola Solov, and this is looking good for him. He's purple through sector 2.
Lightning through the middle of the swimming pool, hits the floor so hard, that Campos, but he manages to scoop it up. This is a much better lap. Belinsky's on one in the dams behind as well, but this is the first real lap that's been strung together now for Solov, and I think this could be it.
This could be good enough to go all the way to the top with the groups combined together. No, misses out by 1,000th of a second. What about Dams? Roman Belinsky up to the line. P7 for him. Yet to find that 3 tenths of a second they need to beat the other group as Rafa Kamara watches on from pit lane.
Incredibly close at the front of this group, and is that a moment that we didn't see earlier on in the lap for Solov? Look neat and tidy from there on. Look at grazing the wall, that bends ever so slightly because of the positioning of those posts down there in the swimming pool. Oh, Gerther as well. These Formula 2 cars so difficult at high speed over the bumps in the swimming pool.
They're going to get one more go at this, aren't they? 1,000th of a second between Kush Miney and Nicola Solov. We really couldn't get much closer than that. Ollie Gerther, P3. That would be a good result for him, especially given what happened to him in practice yesterday. Joshua Dirksen, 4th place, and off he goes for what will be now the last flying laps of this session, Alex.
Might just get round, Miney, or Joshua Dirksen. We're clearing what will be the final lap now. It's going to be nip and tuck, isn't it, for Dirksen? Whether he gets this one and one more, he's slightly ahead of what Miney's managed to achieve. Interestingly, not his best first sector, so in general, Dirksen better in the first. This could be the final lap of this session then for the Invicta man. Might get one more, but he can't count on it. Miney goes purple behind, but is immediately ousted by Stenchon, who's on a good lap.
Yeah, as you said, might get one more, might bail from this and go for one more. Comes through the tunnel now. Stenchon is quickest through the first sector in this session, and Nico Verone once again going very quickly through the first sector as well. Up towards the back goes Joshua Dirksen. He's still improving, sits in 4th place. And would like to improve just for safety to stay in that top 5.
600ths of a second down through to back, slightly wide in the chicane there, but it's all nice stuff from Joshua Dirksen. 4th would become 8th at the moment on the grid, and he needs to be a little bit better than that, doesn't he? If he's going to challenge, points it directly at the line.
Up to the line goes Joshua Dirksen. Now, where will this take him? P3, so he improves a position. That gives him one more row on the grid. What about Stenchon, though? He's looking very quick. Wait for the black and white rodin to come into picture any second now. We jump on board with the Norwegian driver. He heads up to the line, and that will be P1 in group for Martinez Stenchon. 121.274. He gives himself a front row start for the feature race. Mary Boyer over the line, 9th place for him. What about Ollie Gerther? It will be 5th. And we wait for Colton Herter now. He and Roman Belinsky still yet to take the flag.
And Solov's purple in the first sector. Miney has bailed and gone to the pit lane. So whether he's touched the wall and damaged the car or just doesn't feel like he can make any better job of it, we don't know. But Solov's the man I've been watching. Purple in the first, green in the second, monumentally quick through the middle sector. The lap clouts the wall through the exit of the swimming pool. This is the big lap from Solov. Can he put the full group on pole position?
Can he beat a 1:20.923. That's the time to beat. Eyes to the line for Nicholas Solov now. This is it, and he goes to the top. 1:21.053. It will be an outside start for Nicholas Solov on the front row on Grand Prix Sunday, but nevertheless, that is a superb performance for Nicholas Solov. Martini Stench on second, Kushmani third, then Roman Belinsky, Joshua Dirksen, Fittipaldi currently down in P10 and will stay there at the end of the session.
As a result, Rafa Kamara, having had a crash basically at the beginning of his qualifying session, finds himself on pole in Monaco with a different left rear wishbone than he started the qualifying session with.
Wow. You wouldn't believe it, would you, if you were told the story? But Rafa Kamara is something special. Has won both the FRECA and Formula 3 titles back-to-back. Only one driver has won all three of those titles back-to-back. His name is Oscar Piastri. Rafa Kamara looking to do the same thing as him. But let's watch Nicholas Solov, the person who will be alongside him on the front row on Grand Prix Sunday. And that is where he touched the wall, which led him to doing so on the exit.
It was a great lap to watch. It was that little glance, the difference between pole position and not for Solov. In any case, he will be delighted with that performance.
P1, mate, P1. Good job, mate. That could be nice one.
That is why we love Monaco, though, isn't it? That's the difference between pole position and second place. It is just that tiny, tiny brush with the ball.
And in many ways, all you can do is what Solov's done. Different time on track, slightly different positions.
Joshua Dirksen there. There will be two poles for Invicta Racing, of course. Sprint racing pole for Dirksen and overall pole for Kamara.
It will be this session the slower of the two. So it's the fifth row man on 10th position versus the pole. So Joshua Dirksen finds his way to pole position for the sprint.
Race on the P2 I am quite happy with my lap yesterday.
Solid performance for Martini Stenchon and Rodin Motorsport. Good pace in their car.
That was a great lap from Stenchon. 2/10 away eventually from what Solov managed to achieve, and finding himself on a great spot to start the race. P4 in the championship, of course, feature race winner back in Canada, has every opportunity to perform in front of this lot.
Lively session that, wasn't it? Let's go through how Group B ended. We'll tell you who they're going to be alongside whilst we do so. Nicholas Solov then will be on the outside of the front row with Rafa Kamara. It will be an all-road in row 2 with Dunn and Stenchon, Beganovic, Miney, row 3. Row 4 will be Mini and Belinsky. Row 5 will be Leon and Dirksen. Then it will be Miata and Gerther, Intrapubizak and Herta. After that, it will be Montoya and Verone. Row 9 will be Bennett and Boyer as it stands. And then we will have Villa Gomez and Fittipaldi. Van Houten will be towards the back row with Kian Shields. That is the time.
That is the Formula 2 qualifying session there complete. We're not too far away now from Formula 1 free practice 3 that are about to hit the circuit in just over 30 minutes from now. But we'll be on air in just over 10 minutes for the pre-show to FP3 that's not too far away. But Formula 2 sprint racing tomorrow, live, right here. Until then, it's bye-bye.
Joshua Dirksen will be on pole. For now, it's goodbye.